Hey guys, it's Matt. Welcome back to another episode of Notnilc Travel Tours. As a reminder, Notnilc Travel Tours is us, we, traveling virtually or in our imagination to places around the world of two distinct categories. Category 1, a place just we would never, ever get to. 99 point whatever chance in our lifetime we'll never be able to get there. So we go there on Notnilc Travel Tours. The second category is going to a place where people like us would immediately be arrested, which is about 70% of the earth at this point. For example, could you imagine if I visited China? Just once in my life before I drop over dead, take a vacation. I want to see this Great Wall thing. So go off on my own to visit China. What's the problem, you're asking? And it's a one world system. They've set up false protections here, some sort of rules, at least in the United States, they seem to have to operate under. But you go into China, with a plane would land, everybody would be deplaning. Is that a word? Deplaning. The flight attendant would be at the end of the aisle. Bye now. Have a nice trip now. Oh, have fun at the Great Wall, Mr. and Mrs. Brown. Are you Matt McKinley? Come this way. What? These Chinese officials want a word with you. What? Chinese officials? Those two men in sunglasses and the person dressed as a military policeman holding taking the billy club out of its strap. They want to have just get in the car, sir. What did I do? Just get in the car, sir. See, in Russia, they have Siberian gulags. In China, I think they have Mongolian gulags. What's the problem? Within 12 hours, I'd be doing hard labor somewhere in the mountains of Mongolia next to Falun Gong members. This is why we travel virtually, folks. So today's Notnilc Travel Tours falls under that first category, just a strange place that people in the West or Americans have heard of, but you'll never get there. 99% of Americans have no idea that Tasmania is part of Australia. 99% of Americans, if you said within a minute, point to it on the map and you'll win a new car, they would have no idea. My best friend in high school, literally the teacher said, go to the map and point to China. And he's looking all over. He couldn't point to China. That's how bad Americans are with geography. So that's why we do these places we've heard of, like Legend in Lore, like Borneo. Everybody over age 40 has heard of the wild man of Borneo. Never could find it on a map. Tasmania is one of those places. All we know is this cartoon character, the Tasmanian devil. It's like this weird legend in lore growing up. What is this Tasmania? We never really thought about it. It's a place you'll never get to. So first off, to the Australians listening, you have local knowledge. Tell us, Americans, again, Tasmania is just this place of legend that you've heard about, but tell us a little something, I don't know, that we need to know about Tasmania, like, no mainlander of Australia ever goes to Tasmania, or all mainlanders love to go to Tasmania. Just something local knowledge that we could use or gain from your local perspective in the comments. First up, a very basic overview, mostly for the people that live in the Northern Hemisphere that just don't have a clue about this place, like I didn't. Tasmania is an island state of Australia. It's located 150 miles south of the Australian mainland, all the way down southeast, all by itself, below all other parts of Australia. Get this, Tasmania is the main island, which is the 26th largest island in the world, and also encompasses or includes the surrounding 1,000 islands. What? Do you think, why can't we go to one of them and just be left alone by the Notnilc? 1,000 islands. It is Australia's least populous state. Just over 500,000 residents as of December 2021. Wonder if they all wore masks. The state capital and the largest city is Hobart, with around 40% of the population living in the general area of the state capital. This makes it Australia's most decentralized state. Okay, so Tasmania is this massive, gigantic island below Australia, probably, half the size of Texas. It's the 26th largest in the world. Okay, continuing. Tasmania's main island, not the 1,000 that surrounds it, the big sucker, it says was inhabited by Aboriginal peoples. Was? Well, what happened to them? Well, we'll see. It looks like the same Notnilc script's coming. It is thought that Aboriginal Tasmanians became separated from the mainland Aboriginal groups about 11,700 years ago. Oh, no. After rising sea levels formed the Bass Strait. Rising sea levels? There wasn't no Al Gore problems back then. How'd you have rising sea levels without the Al Gore problems? We'll come back to that. That don't make no sense. But they got identical. Put your hands out. They got separated from their brothers and sisters on the mainland. It says 11,700 years ago, right down to the year. Now, how could anybody know that? Think about it. If it said we think they got separated around 10,000 years ago, if it was put like that, it would be somewhat believable. They have an exactly at 11,700 years ago they got. Nobody could possibly know that. Notnilc and Bott writing this stuff, you lose credibility when you're too sure about these dates you couldn't possibly be sure of. Just say around 10,000. And I was going to say more people will believe you, but everybody believes this crap anyway. Okay, continuing. The island of Tasmania was permanently set. Oh, it's the same Notnilc repeating script themes again. Here we go. It's just like Borneo and all the others. It was permanently settled by Europeans. No. Here it comes again. In 1803. I'm telling you guys, this is the same damn script all over. This is ridiculous. This reality is a joke. There's no way this is real. 1803. Permanently settled by Europeans oh, come on, the same stuff, as a penal settlement of the British Empire. We were told as kids all of Australia was the penal settlement. That's not good enough? Then you got to go out to this island. And then if you went out and looked at the history of those 1,000 islands, one's just a little plot of sand. They call it an island. One of the 1,000, literally like somebody dumped 2 Home Depot buckets of sand. That's one of the 1,000 islands. That was a penal colony. The Home Depot bucket of sand, everything's a penal colony. How far do you have to go to take these prisoners away from London? It doesn't make no sense. Just take them off to Croatia or something. That would have been good enough. This is an absolute joke, people. Every time I look at the Wikipedia and the history, it's all repeating scripts. I guarantee there'll be the wiping out of the Tasmanian Aboriginals and the enslavement. It'll all come. The Aboriginal population is estimated to have been between 3,000 and 7,000 at the time of the British settlement. How would they know that? But was almost wiped out. Oh, come on, here we go. Within 30 years, almost wiped out during the conflicts with the settlers known as the Black War and the spread of infectious diseases. Is the same cue cards passed around to every single thing we're ever going to look at regarding colonization and the colonial powers? The conflict, which peaked between 1825 and 1831 and led to more than 3 years of martial law, cost the lives of almost 1,100 Aboriginal people and settlers. Come on, Notnilc reality. This is a joke. You're embarrassing yourself. Now, at this point, if anybody wants to say to me, Matt, in terms of the way you're presenting this about Tasmania, you're wrong. I'm an Australian. I've been out there. There's tremendous evidence that the colonizing powers of the same cast of characters of Europe were there around 1800. They did wipe out the Aboriginals. Matt, stop talking about it as a script. You're wrong. Well, give me a second to respond, because I don't think you might not be old guard. You might not understand my true meaning. I need to be very clear on this. When I say it's a script, I'm not saying it's fake. I'm not saying it didn't happen. I'm not saying that at all. I'm sure it did happen. I'm sure if I went there, all the evidence is there. I'm saying the number of times this script repeats throughout world history, no real world could do that. Okay, I'm sure I'm not saying it's faked. I'm sure there's tremendous evidence that if I wouldn't lived out in Tasmania, I went searching for the Tasmanian devil, and there's history I could uncover that there were Aboriginals and this Black War existed, and the same cast of characters from the colonizing European powers came in and they screwed with the Aboriginals and they killed them off, and the diseases they brought. I'm sure the evidence is there. I'm saying the number of times this script repeats around the world, it's not possible in a real world. Case by case, it's real. Overall, take a step back 10,000 miles. It's not real. Now, do you understand the words coming out of my mouth? Pick almost any place around the world with the ancient culture of indigenous peoples. It could be the islands around Jamaica, or what are they called? The Arawak Indians of the island nations in the Caribbean or Caribbean. I mean, it's the same every single time. Colonial powers come in, war, kill them off, bring disease. Every single time. Now, I remember years back, we had theories that, okay, Notnilc has to go eliminate the ancient cultures because the ancient cultures potentially carried ancient knowledge or knew something about themselves or how the world works. There's still truth to that, of course. But we've seen this script so many times, I've shifted to a degree. We're at the point now where we have to say, like, how could the colonial powers of, say, 1650 through the early 1800s, how could just these little group of countries have invaded or basically laid the same story or script down on almost every indigenous population you can research almost around the world between 1650 and the early 1800s? I mean, everywhere we look, it's the same story. Just think about the infrastructure, the amount of ships, the amount of people that would want to get on those ships 100 years after 100 years. It just doesn't make any sense. It doesn't add up. I'm much more in the fake world camp today, guys, than I am that the Notnilc just is working hard to eliminate the ancient knowledge carried forth by indigenous peoples. I still believe there's truth to that, but we've seen so much of it. Okay, the colonial powers, the UK, France, the Netherlands, or Holland at the time, to a degree, Italy, Portugal. Okay, I'm missing one or two. Just that's it. And their little fleet of ships screwed over every single indigenous population. Basically, anybody could stumble upon in a 250-year period. Going all the 400-year period, going all the way back to the Mayans and the Aztecs. It's a repeating script there. How is it possible? How do you get that many people from these countries to want to go on ships and live all over? You would take tens of thousands of people going out constantly from these colonial powers, all wanting to leave their homes, all wanting to leave their families, just to screw over the indigenous people, to fuck over the Indians, leave their kids behind, okay, I could see if there was a gold rush or we need to do this or that, or this constant theme. Guys, I don't buy it. I'm sorry. This reality is not easy to figure out, guys. In any individual case, the evidence is there, 100%, no doubt, to support the case. You in this reality, to back up and look at the general, to look at the whole. That's when it breaks down. That's when it doesn't make any sense. So all over the wall in front of me, I have the Post-it notes with the year the colonial power came in, the country, or what it was called at the time, and how the indigenous population was fucked over and how they stole all the resources and how they brought all the disease. Imagine the amount of Post-it notes all over my wall. So if let's just pick one, and we had unlimited funds, we could go do unlimited research for the next 4 years. When we get there, the evidence would be there. All these people would say, here's the evidence. This is the indigenous population that was here. Here's the colonial power that came in. Here's the infrastructure they left behind. Here's the Roman wall they left behind. Whatever. The evidence would be there on a case-by-case basis. This is how this reality works. But overall, if you just look from a common sense perspective, there's just no possible way. This reality breaks down when you follow the river back to its initial spring or tributaries, or it's just like a rainbow. There it is. I'm going to follow it. When you get there, there's nothing there. That's how this reality works. On the other side of the rainbow, though, it's very real. If you want to chase that side when you get there, it's very real. So let's go investigate this country, one of the Post-it notes, where this colonial power screwed over this indigenous population. So you get there, and you can see the evidence that the colonial power was there. Here's the infrastructure they left behind. Whether the indigenous population is still there or not, here's the infrastructure they had. The whole case would be there. So this really had to have happened. But again, if you back up far enough, how could it have happened in the same way as many times as it did? It gets into like that pitch meeting from the big day in 2001, the 7-Eleven job application. Like, who's the person in 1945 or 1980 that said, I have an idea what we can do for when we change over the new millennium on our calendar, not the calendar we give the great unwashed, on our calendar. Here's what we can do. Do you think, did anybody really raise their hand and have that idea? So it just kind of breaks down. So some man or woman volunteered an idea. We'll have 2 buildings. And it just doesn't make sense. Does it? It was just the idea of 1 or 2 people. See, it all breaks down. It was like it was going to happen either way. Nobody Matt, what are you saying? Nobody had the idea. I don't know what that, like the pyramids, all the megalithic structures. Who built them? Nobody built them. It's just part of reality. Same thing is kind of going on here. If you just that pitch meeting, or who had the okay, let's just say the colonial powers. Oh, now they have this fleet of ships, and there's a race to say plant their flag. Is anybody trying to explain it away to me like this, Matt? They wanted to plant their flag. I could see that happening for a 100-year period. They went out and tried to colonize and plant their flag and say, this is now owned by England and this is owned by France. And I mean, okay, and there's some conflict with the indigenous people, but first off, you want to talk about being spread thin. These are relatively small countries. How big you think the fleet was? It like the Empire in Star Wars times 1,000,000? I mean, every time you go out in a ship, it's 8 weeks out, 8 weeks. Nobody ever has a family. You could have just tens of thousands of people coming and going a month. I mean, in every case, the indigenous population died off or lost the war. I mean, it just doesn't, it's the side of the rainbow that breaks down. If it happened, let's just say we researched 4 or 5 places that had indigenous populations where the colonial powers came in, starting with the Mayans and the Aztecs and Borneo and a few places. Okay, but every time we look, it's the same sort of thing. No real world could do this, guys. I mean, let me just remember when I said to you, the next big thing that happens in the world, the next gigantic news story, do you think it'll just be a legitimate news story? Or do you think it will be just riddled, layered with conspiracy? Can anything happen in the world big that makes the evening news that to us won't be just absolutely layered and riddled with conspiracy? And you guys 2.5, 3 years ago, this is before 2020 and the next big one. This is right after Kobe Bryant. I put this out. Nothing big will ever happen that won't be just dragging a gigantic chain of rabbit holes, a giant chain of conspiracy that can be followed forever, ad infinitum, whatever that means. This is the same way. It's reality playing a game in some way. Doesn't matter if you could go out there and find the infrastructure that the Romans left behind. I'm saying it doesn't matter. I say the same thing now in front of the megalithic structures or some of the cathedrals. Matt, you're standing right in front of this megalithic structure or this impossible architecture. You're standing right in front of it, Matt. I took you out here to show you. Frommer's tried to warn you. Somebody had to have built it, Matt. Now you're touching the concrete blocks. No, doesn't mean somebody had to build it. You're falling for reality's trick. I might be wrong, but leaving on the table that nobody possibly build it is bigger thinking than your box thinking and your bookends thinking that somebody had to have built it. No, that's limiting. That's almost ignorant, even if I'm wrong. So regarding the examples we're talking about now, in each single case, if you went out and did the field research and you found the infrastructure left behind of the invading colonial power, and you found whatever remnants of the indigenous population that was there, generally proves the historical story. So if that happened, what you're saying, Matt, is even if you go do that research and you find that evidence, it's real when you're there, but then overall it's not real. It's real, but overall not real. Yeah, I don't really have a better way of putting it, but that's what I believe at this point. On the whole, it couldn't possibly, all this could not have been pulled off. 350 years, every single indigenous population all over the world, screwed over, invading colonial powers. Just people, the people that live in those countries, just think about that. It breaks down on the ground. It breaks down in the details, this reality. That side of the rainbow breaks down. Just think about Portugal. Think about the Netherlands. Think about France. Think about countries that had the shipping power. So, okay, Matt, maybe they didn't have factories where, put bottle tops on whatever, and that's what people were employed in, Matt. But, you know how many, it would take hundreds of thousands of people coming and going, willing to get on ships. And again, nobody has a family, nobody has a wife, nobody has kids. They just go off for years at a time to war with the indigenous people. Maybe I could see it happening for 20 years, 25 years. When you get tired of it, hundreds and hundreds of years, the same script, the same theme. The people would be like, you'd hear the stories of how horrible it would be making your way in these countries like Borneo, and the word wouldn't spread. So then, okay, for 20 some years, then the next 10 years, it'd be like, well, we can't get anybody to go out in these ships anymore. Well, they were forced to. Oh, come on. It breaks down. You couldn't get all these people charged up to go kill off the indigenous, hundreds of thousands coming and going month after month, hundreds of years after hundreds of years. It's just, the people would come back from Borneo and be like, it was hell. And don't ever go out to these places again. The disease, the malaria, the tsetse flies, the indigenous, the word would spread. After about 15 years, you wouldn't be able to get anybody on a ship. I mean, this doesn't make any sense. Reality now, we have a new term. It's the rainbow. One side is very real. It's not exactly a rainbow because you can't, when you see it out your window, you can't chase either of it down, but you know what I mean. One side is very real. The whole or the general is not real at all. When you back up 100,000 miles and look down at it, you see, even if the individual pieces seem real, when you're on top of it, overall, as you back up, it's not real. Very similar to whatever quantum phenomenon, and for some reason, it seems to be similar. The wave, it's real when you look at it, but it's similar. There's something similar going on here if you can step back at the whole reality and look down from 1,000,000 miles down at it. As you move away from it, you can see how fake it is. When you're right on top of it, looking at the details, oh, here is an ancient spoon that this indigenous culture left behind, then it has to be real. And that's why this reality wants to suck you in, try to get you closer to the details. What does it do to conspiracy theory researchers? Do more research. Another rabbit hole. Get closer to it. Come on, get closer to the screen. It makes it real as you get closer to it. The real consciousness getting closer to it is probably responsible for making it real. That quantum phenomenon. This is how this reality works, folks. Yes, to stand in front of the ancient architecture or whatever and say, well, it's right there in front of us. Somebody had to build it. I might be wrong, but that limiting thinking is ignorant. All right, let's go back to Tasmania. We have a new term in our reality conversation discussions. We'll continue this definitely a lot in the future. The rainbow, but one side of the rainbow, the specifics are very real. The other side of the rainbow, as you kind of back up and take in the whole, it's not very real. It's real and not at the same time. Yes, that's what this reality does. So let's go back. I'm sure there'll be more. I haven't read through this, guys. It'll be the same type of script. Let's do a little more. I read this, but continuing. The conflict, which peaked in 1825 to 1831, led to more than 3 years of martial law for the Aboriginal people, cost the lives of almost 1,100 Aboriginal people. If you're screaming out at me the 11, the numbers, I'm not saying nobody lost their lives as an Aboriginal person. I'm just saying it doesn't, if they did, and they probably did, the numbers always the gematria has to work their way into reality too and appear on that back end of the rainbow. That's showing how fake everything is. Continuing, under British rule, the island was initially part of the colony of New South Wales, but became a separate colony under the name of Van Diemen's Land, named after Anthony Van Diemen. Diemen, D-I-E-M-E-N, should be just D-E-M-O-N, D-I-E-M-E-N. Thou art What were you doing there, Anthony? Why don't you just leave good people alone? Thou art a villain. 1825. It did name it after himself. What? Your indigenous names that go back thousands of years? We don't need that. We're going to call it me. What are you going to call it? Me. Anthony Van Diemen. What a villain. Approximately 80,000 convicts were sent to Van Diemen's Land. Let me just say that Van the Demon. 80,000 convicts. Where were the 80,000? Not 8,000 or 800. 80,000 convicts. Guys, it took me a month basically to get all the materials in the stove. To get the bricks and understand what type of cutting tool I need or what blade I need. It took me a month to put everything in place for what I'm doing here now. A month. Just to put some bricks together. You know how long it would take? The infrastructure needed to 80,000, the food for the ships, the 80,000 convicts. Come on, dude. Come on. It ceased, these convicts coming, in 1853. In 1855, the present Constitution of Tasmania was enacted. They're going to enact a British Constitution on the indigenous. Indigenous people like, I didn't ask for this. Who the fuck sent you here? The following year, the colony formally changed its name to, screw the local indigenous names. We just call it what we want. In 1901, it became a state of Australia through the process of the Federation of Australia. But of course, now they love the Indigenous. It's First Nations Peoples Day, and we love you. And it's the same villains that stole everything from you. I mean, I hope, and the Indigenous populations, the First Nation people of Canada, they go out and participate in the celebrations of the assistant ski instructor puts on, and they should just check out and say, we want nothing to do with your governments. I don't care if you're celebrating us now. We want nothing to do with you. Just check out. Not, they mock you again. You dress up in your traditional garb. These Notnilc minions laugh at you behind your back. Tasmania has the smallest economy of the Australian states and territories. Well, no kidding. Is BHP Minerals ripping it apart, trying to mine it up yet? Comprises principally tourism. That's us. Does it comprise principally virtual tourism through Notnilc Travel Tours? Does their board of tourism record this little venture? Agriculture and aquaculture, education and healthcare. Tasmania is a significant agricultural exporter. Really? I ain't never seen no fruit with, say, from Tasmania on it. I never seen no ceramic cat at the bottom. Everything says either from Guatemala, like the bananas, or anything made anywhere else. At the bottom, it's a big silver ugly sticker that reminds you it was made in China. Yuck. Next category, toponymy, which is how places are named. Tasmania is named after, the Dutch explorer Abel Tasman, who made the first reported European sighting of the island on the 24th of November, 1642. He was reportedly, it says, the first European sighting of Tasmania, 1642. They were sailing around the coast of mainland Australia, and the guy was at the end of the ship like Jack and Rose. He's like, I'm the king of the world. Look, land ho, and it's a big-ass island, too. What is it? We can fuck them over too. Let's get right on them and screw. You think there's people there? You think, hey, Bezzo, you think we can go over to that island and fuck those people over too, Bezzo? We're gonna screw them too. Maybe we should change our approach. Maybe this should be the first indigenous culture that we try to work with and try to help. No, screw them over just like we screwed everybody over, and we get everybody come out in these ships for the last 300 years. In the reconstructed Palawakani language, another ancient culture wiped out, the main island of Tasmania is called whatever, I can't pronounce it, originally derived a number of Palawakani names based on historical records of Aboriginal names have been accepted by the Tasmanian Australian government. Oh, wow, isn't that wonderful? The Australian government, with roots the original invading colonial powers, has adopted some of your original Aboriginal names to complement the river, the forest has already been named, but we're going to complement it, it seems, with some of the Aboriginal names. It might be like a little sign under a sign. I can't pronounce the names. Isn't that nice? Brings me to, there is some truth in these frauds, Rage Against the Machine. There's some truth in the lyrics. And what comes to mind is, we'll kill them off, take their land, and go there for vacation. I don't know which song that is, but it just came to mind. Every single time the colonial powers set to sail, 3-hour tour, they set sail to go to this island or this place where there's indigenous people, or this part of Borneo, or this part of the islands that are just under Jamaica where the Arawak Indians are. It says, we'll kill them off, take their land, and go there for vacation, though the vacations never came. This is probably the last part I'll read. The first section repeats, then it continues. The first reported sighting of Tasmania by a European, the 24th of November, 1642, by Dutch explorer Abel Tasman, who landed at Blackman's Bay. A century later, put your hands out. A century later, here come the French, 1772, an expedition led by Marc Joseph Marion du Fresnay. What the hell's name is that? Landed at nearby Blackman's Bay. The following year, Tobias Fourneau became the first Englishman to land at Tasmania when he arrived at Adventure Bay, which he named after his ship, the HMS Adventure. Captain James Cook also landed at Adventure Bay, 1777, blah, blah, blah. More people landing, Europeans landing, Europeans to screw over the indigenous people. Sealer, oh no. Matt, is there any group that survived and just didn't get screwed over? Even the animals? No, even the animals got screwed over. Sealers and whalers based themselves on Tasmania Islands from 1798 to 1803 in New South Wales. Governor Philip King sent Lieutenant John Bowen to establish a small military outpost on the eastern shore of the Derwent River in order to forestall any claims to the island by French explorers who had been exploring the southern Australian coastline. Bowen, who led a party in Tasmania of 49 people, including 21 male and 3 female convicts, named the camp Risdon. Well, wait a second. So the Governor Philip King sent Lieutenant John Bowen, so take 49 people and stake our claim because the French are doing this and that on this other part over here. So I'm going to take 21 prisoners along. That makes a lot of sense. I know that for whatever reason they had to do that in the Dirty Dozen, right? Or maybe it was the Magnificent Seven, some of them were convicts. The Dirty Dozen had to go get convicts, but when you do regular expeditions, again, I didn't write no book on Rule 1 through 3 on how to run a successful expedition, but having half your party as convicts, I mean, you would lead to either them getting away or taking your supplies, a stab in the back. I mean, these must be the friendliest convicts. They were already hauled thousands of miles away from their home. You think they're going to be in a good mood, sir? Listen up. I'm Lieutenant John Bowen, and you 24 convicts are going to come with us. Where are we going? We're going to venture 200 miles out into Tasmania to stake our claim, and you convicts are going to help us out, right? Oh, absolutely, sir. We're going to be very helpful. We're not going to run away or steal your supplies the first chance we get. See, one can only assume that if a prisoner of sorts is shipped to Tasmania, 3,000 miles away, that it's not like a minor offender. It's not somebody with parking tickets piled up, or they didn't clean up the horse poop. It's probably not a minor offender. It's like what it was, Suicide Squad to a degree, times a million, and that's the type of people you're taking down to Australia, but then you're going to trust them on your expedition. The bottom section here says this is about the time when 75,000 convicts were sent to Tasmania. 4 out of every 10 people transported to Australia. It says Tasmania got 75,000. Here we go with this repeating script. Tensions between Tasmanians' Aboriginal and white inhabitants rose. Tensions rose, partly driven by increasing competition for kangaroo and other game. They can't even leave the poor animals alone. Leave the kangaroo alone, you colonizing devils. Explorer and naval officer John Oxley in 1810 noted the many atrocious cruelties inflicted on Aboriginal people by convict bushrangers in the north, which in turn led to black attacks on solitary white hunters. Hostilities increased further with the arrival of 600 more colonists from Norfolk Island between 1807 and 1813. They established farms along the River Derwent and east and west, can't pronounce it, occupying 10% of Van Diemen's Land. By 1824, the colonial population had swelled to 12,600, while the inland sheep population had reached 200,000. Van Diemen's Land had an enormous gender imbalance, with male colonists outnumbering females 6-1. Well, what woman's going to want to get on one of these ships to go into some sort of hostile territory? I don't believe the men even. The whole thing doesn't add up to me. 1822, 6-1. It says, historian Nicholas Clements has suggested the voracious appetite for native women was the most important trigger for the explosion of violence from the late 1820s. Basically, it's the same script from Braveheart. It's prima nocta. Prima nocta, first night. Prima nocta all over again. This will invite just the types of lords and ladies that we want to invade Scotland. If we can't get them out, the Aboriginals, in this case, not William Wallace, will breed them out. From 1825 to 1828, the number of native attacks more than doubled each year. Well, I could see why. I don't blame them. If it was like a football game, I'd be for the natives, of course. Raising panic among settlers. Well, What'd you expect would happen? Over the summer of 1826 to 1827, clans from the Big River, Oyster Bay, and North Midlands nations speared stock keepers on farms and made it clear that they wanted the settlers and their sheep and cattle to move. Well, yeah, of course. It's their land going back 10,000 years. Well, of course. I'm for the natives, aren't you? Settlers responded vigorously, resulting in many mass killings, of course. Look, okay, removal of Aboriginal people. Here's blah, 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 blah. Okay, guys, look. Guys, this reality, I'm sorry, it is a rainbow. This stuff really happened to these Aboriginal people. If you go and do the atrocities are, but if you back up far enough, I'm sticking to this. If you want to think that's crazy, or I've gone too far, or this channel's getting a little strange, be my guest. I'll never get more than 11 subscribers in a month again anyway. But overall, what happens specifically can't happen. But when you investigate it specifically, it happened. I'm sticking to that. It's a quantum phenomenon at the larger macro level. What exactly does that mean? I don't know, but I'm sticking with it. I've seen too much repeating script in too many different areas where the whole is impossible, yet the specific is easy to prove or justify that it actually took place. I'm not just talking about the invasion of native population lands. I'm talking about everything that goes on in this reality, right down to the mall events, to the school events, to the things they say to take place in outer space. If you get real close to it, it's extremely believable or maybe even real. If you back up, it's not. Both at the same time, yes. What exactly does that mean? I don't know, but I'll leave you to ponder that. If you dismiss it as impossible, ridiculous, and ignorant, then you haven't studied reality. Go back to watching CNN. Thanks for listening.